somehow when we procurement people, when we talk about stakeholders, we're positioning it as us versus them. But it's not us versus them because it's always us. We're part of the same company.
I'll tell you about my early perspective as a CPO. I had imposter syndrome. I was working around C-suite. I didn't feel comfortable with them. And I made plenty of excuses not to go have those conversations. If you're new to the job at whatever level and you're holding yourself back because you're looking for excuses that I need to fix this other stuff before I can talk to them, I would encourage you to think about it a little bit differently. Hey everybody, welcome to Proc-N-Roll, your guide to practical procurement. Super excited to be back with my best friends here, Natasha. We're coming to you from around the world. She's in California, and Mr. Zach, he's in London. And today you guys find me back in Hawaii again. Came over here to visit my sweetheart. Valentine's Day's coming up, and so excited to spend a little bit of time with her. It's been monsoon rain and crazy here, but what is top of mind for you guys today? Anything happening in your personal life or work?
So much work. So much work. Interesting stuff happening. Zach is not the only person who is super occupied with AI.
Yeah, I think we've got to get back into an AI episode soon, one of these days. Zach, I had a great opportunity to visit Natasha. She had a hurricane come through her backyard and knock down her fence. So we were doing some construction analysis. And anyway, she made me a smoothie and she introduced me to her ginger shot recipe. And so I went home and I started popping ginger shots, and I made them from scratch, right? So she gave me the grind up the ginger, grind up the, just say turmeric and lemon juice. It turned into this big blob of like fiber in my blender. So I had to put in a little carrot juice, a little bit of coconut water and a little bit of water and then juice it through the juicer. I ended up with a whole quart of this stuff that burns like friggin' cayenne pepper. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
And there's no cayenne pepper, but so my daughter's boyfriend that's his recipe combination of honey, lemon juice, turmeric, and ginger. Like if you had 3 hours of sleep and if you're low on Adderall, just have the shot and boom, you're woken up and you're just walking on clouds.
100%. It's been my wake up call for the last 10 days or so since I saw Natasha. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, we've got a lot to talk about today. If you remember the last episode, we were getting into supplier management. We were talking about value and savings. That leads perfectly into this concept of stakeholder management. This is a topic we have talked about either directly or indirectly probably through the entire podcast history here. There's tons and tons of references back in the different episodes that we've been through. But we want to dive in to how to really do this. And to start, I want to ask the question, okay, I'm new to leadership or I'm new to a company. You always come in, look at transformation and everything else. And what should be square in your mind is who are my stakeholders and what's going on and how can I manage them? So if you're just getting started or you need to make it better, how should you get started thinking about stakeholder management? What is step one in the practical scale of getting into stakeholder management? Who wants to take it first?
I can take it first, Conrad. I'll be candid with all our listeners, okay? I'm okay at stakeholder management, but I wasn't always okay at stakeholder management. I was one of those that had to learn the hard way what emotional intelligence was, and how important people's feelings are, etc. Right? So suffice to say, this is my framework and has been for the last 10 years. Okay, ever since I read this, that what is it called again? The front part of your brain, the
frontal lobe.
Frontal lobe, yeah. So this part evolved way before this part. This is the thinking fast part. This is the emotional part. This is the part that deals with fight and flight and all that stuff. And then this part is the part that deals with logic and reasoning and thinking. I think it's a lot bigger than this part. I'm not sure. But here's why it's important. Or is it the other way around, Natasha? Is this part bigger than... Okay. Well, that just underscores the point more. So your frontal lobe is bigger than your fast brain is bigger than your slow brain, and also it's faster, and it's where all your emotions live and everything. So once I picked up on that and I really internalized it, I realized that for you to build a relationship with a stakeholder, it never comes back to logic, numbers. That stuff's important. People want to know that you're going to apply that, but it really comes down to safety, emotional connection. And it's the word EQ, emotional intelligence and emotions. I think it's such a human thing, and we shouldn't be afraid of like treating it like a real discipline and something that you need to work on in your own personal skill set. It's what I did, right? It's what I did. I used to, I remember a couple of cases where I had clients who, in very pressurized situations, I wasn't helping the situation. And so either they'd break down in tears, or they would, start to really try and avoid me. And at that point, I realized, okay, I got to break this hurdle first of putting a relationship in place with the stakeholder, and then I can apply the pressure and everything that I need to do. That's just my 2 cents on like stakeholder relationship. It's you can't think your way to it, is what I'm trying to say.
It's interesting. I would never say it about you, Zach, because you come across as very measured temperament. I don't see you spiking. It's hard for me to envision. Either you fake it very, very well, or you really have done the work.
No, I faked it until one day I'm like, I'm not faking it anymore. So,
congratulations. That worked.
I love that comment. I had to learn that people's feelings really matter. That's got to go on the Proc-N-Roll quote wall. That's fantastic.
It sounds obvious, but honestly, I did have to learn that. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because somehow when we procurement people, when we talk about stakeholders, we're positioning it as us versus them. But it's not us versus them, because it's always us. We're part of the same company. And I think what's important to realize that if when the stakeholders have responsibilities and fiduciary duties for the company, they have to deliver something. They have to deliver goods or services. And that's what the company, the enterprise, holds them accountable to. And if procurement can come forward and offer help, get to their goals and objectives faster or cheaper or with better third-party providers, or in a more elegant way, or bring more customers, whatever the desired outcome is, securing capacity, fine. There's no stakeholder that would not take that. Like, normal people don't usually say no to something that makes their life easier, better, faster, more efficient. The problem is that association that our stakeholders have with procurement, very often that we're slowing down the process, we bring bureaucracy, we do not have a strong subject matter expertise as stakeholders do. But we're barging our way through because we gatekeepers. You have to engage procurement. You don't have to engage procurement for as long as you follow procurement policies or processes. B, we have to add the value. So I think relationships with stakeholders are great when we're bringing something to the table that they don't have. And I think they are sour when they're looking at us and they're questioning the value we generate or subject matter expertise that we have in their area.
Just to double on that, Natasha, because you're a CPO and you've seen this firsthand many places. It's brought to mind one of my clients, another really great, excellent CPO. It took on a new role, managing a large bank. And she said exactly the same thing as you did, Natasha. She's like, Zach, I've just landed. And for me to build the stakeholder relationship, the first thing I need to do is make sure I'm delivering on all the basics. Make sure I'm not creating problems for the stakeholders. Things are running smoothly. Once things are running smoothly and there's no noise and the stakeholders are comfortable that we're doing the basics right and we're doing all the things right, then I can approach those stakeholders and have more strategic conversations and build more like relationships around looking after new areas of spend, and they'll trust me more after that point. So is that what you're trying to say, that you need to really get your procurement function sort of working for the stakeholder before you can approach them for like more serious collaboration, or not?
So stakeholders very often identify procurement with a process. So if process is very, very difficult to follow, and they spend more energy trying to figure out how to bypass it than how to follow it, then it's very difficult to win their attention, forget about hearts and minds, if the core function of procurement, make everyone's life easier and fast, if that is not fulfilled. But what I also know is that, and I may have shared this example in our previous episode, but it's very telling, is that I had a conversation with head of marketing once, chief marketing officer, chief real estate and facilities officer. And in both instances, I asked them for giving us opportunity to participate in their holy grail of negotiations or supplier choosing. And their response was, don't think us, like, don't think me. I think you, because I always was hoping for deep partnership with procurement, but the previous team never provided the level of expertise that would generate something incremental to what my team was already bringing to the table.
Zach, I just want to add like a little bit of caution to your CPO friend's perspective there. This is all about building trust and relationship. And it's easy. And I'll tell you about my early perspective as a CPO. I had imposter syndrome. I was working around C-suite. I didn't feel comfortable with them. And I made plenty of excuses not to go have those conversations. If you're new to the job, at whatever level, and you're holding yourself back because you're looking for excuses that I need to fix this other stuff before I can talk to them, I would encourage you to think about it a little bit differently. Like, I'm going to go fix that stuff, but if they tell me they want me to fix it, I commit to fix it, and I come back and show it to them fixed, I've actually built the relationship at a better level, right? Because I've started to listen. I understood what they needed me to do to enable their business. Even though it wasn't necessarily what I would have put on the top of what I wanted to do, I went back and fixed those things, and I came back and reported back, and I engaged them early in the partnership of that transformation, even in the basic stuff of data, PO, invoice, payment, contracts, the really, transactional sorts of things. So I wouldn't wait. I would engage them early in that conversation and then show them that you can do what you set out to do. So I want to ask a question again here. You're on day one. You're new to the company like this CPO. You're in a situation. You're spending 60, 90 days on a listening tour. Do you do that, or do you go out hunting for value that you can add? Right? Like, how do you actually go about engaging with these stakeholders the first time? What's the nature of that conversation? You're going to find low hanging fruit. At least you're going to see what you will consider low hanging fruit. So how do you approach that?
I would say for me, it's two things I try to do. One is create the space and the safety environment, right? Because people are meeting you for the first time. They're going to try and assess kind of what you're about. And you need to put them at ease. You need to say like, hey, I'm here to help. I'm not here to challenge you or to, we're here to work together, and create that kind of sense of safety, trust, etc. So that'll be one thing I'm trying to do. But at the same time, I'll be trying to establish credibility. So my point is, I'll be focused on the relationship and getting to know the person and creating that sense of relationship and ease. But at the same time, I'm thinking about, I need to show credibility that I can actually deliver on their problems and the changes that they need to see, etc. I think CPOs all try to do that. Certainly when I've looked at 100-day plans and stuff, and I've built those with CPOs, I've observed that is what they try to do. Try and just establish their place in the organization, see how much influence procurement has. Sometimes they get dealt a bad hand, and it's like procurement just is not on the map for anyone, right? And that's the hardest job because you got to go and put it on the map. But yeah, I would start with those two things: credibility and putting people at ease.
Natasha, is that just an easy answer, or do you see the opposite side of that?
So my practice is that I'm meeting with all stakeholders maybe first time. When I'm meeting with them first time, I'm asking them a question. What is your experience with procurement? And then people pause because they don't know, do I mean procurement team, procurement function, like the processes, tools, and all of that. And that kind of like starts the conversation double clicking on all these aspects, because when you ask people about their experience, they're not necessarily complaining about individuals. So it makes it easier for people to express their perspective. They're just sharing how it was, where were we helpful. I think it's very important for CPOs or anyone who having these conversations not to instantly get defensive. And because this conversation is good to have not just when you just joining the company, it's good to have when you 3 years in and say that we've been partnering for quite some time. How do you experience working with us? What do you like about this work? What you don't like about this work? What would you like to change?
Natasha, did you manage that like formally? Did you like have scheduled sessions every year, every quarter, every however long with certain stakeholders so you can check on progress, or like how do you stay on track? Because if in a big organization like the organizations you've worked with, there's so many people, right? Like, do you pick a few and then you try and work on them at any one time, or
just in the beginning when you're on a listening tour? Then you are selecting your peers and you're visiting all the peers. And then I usually go one level down too, because this is where magic happens. Because conversation is between one C person to another C person. They can arrive to great outcome. Everyone shakes hands, but nothing happens because then it dies on the 1 or 2 levels below. So the more you can visit, the better. We'll probably talk later in a conversation about stakeholder map, or maybe it's a good time to actually bring it up now. Let me ask our producer if it's possible to bring the map now. Or
Natasha,
Conrad,
while I was bringing that up, let me just highlight something that you said just a moment ago. You said it's important not to get defensive. That's really easy to do when you walk into an organization and you're in that first 90 days, right? Because I can look in my rearview mirror and say, oh, but that was Zach, right? Like, that wasn't us. We're going to do better. What do you do when the reality is it was us? I've been here 2 or 3 years now, and you're giving hard feedback. Like, what's your advice to leaders who are feeling defensive in that situation? And maybe, I think at that point, maybe our stakeholders aren't even being totally honest with us, but we still need that kind of listening ear. So how do you deal with that?
Okay, well, at the fear of losing some of our followers, I'll share my honest perspective. I think we are all too attached to our positions and titles. And if we would find a way to calm down our ego and be very honest with ourselves, we would know that we're not coming perfectly, brilliantly, shiny at every step of our way. And most likely, some of pieces of feedback that will be shared with us will probably be fair. And if we find a way to master taking this feedback as an opportunity to become even better, to create even stickier solution, to improve, and like, if someone is telling me that your team is this, your team is that, and like this didn't work out as smooth, it's like, I hear you. Like, I often ask people, even like people managers in my team, if you were to coach me, how would you suggest I approach it next time? Because if people have opinions and perspectives, I actually may learn how to do it better next time, so that when I'm asking for this feedback, let's say a year from now, I'm not going to be beaten up again, but I actually would hear that, you know what, comparing to our previous conversation, it got improved. So 2 points that I'm trying to make is that if we can work with our ego and manage it and not get defensive, and realize that it is possible that if we are maturing organization, that we have missed some of the areas, that would be helpful. And second, ask people to coach you on how to solve this problem next time. You may get some pearls.
So that sounds like be a leader, set aside the ego, listen to the feedback. It may burn inside, but hold it inside. Kind of do the fake it till you make it like Zach, right? It's your baby. Maybe it's your team. It's your tools that they're giving you feedback about, but you've got to set that aside, and you got to be focused on that. I think this is really important, right? Because that the ability to get through those hard conversations and get the feedback and have them, because they're testing you, by the way, when they're saying that stuff, right? How is this person going to react? And if you kind of spin into, non-productive, mindset, framework conversation, like you're kind of out at that point, right? They're kind of pushing all their chips onto the table, and you've got to play it right, or you're it's going to take a long time to recover.
Yeah. Do you remember, guys, we had an episode on feedback, and we discussed like at length how to give and how to receive feedback. And and I think it was part of our stakeholder management series. And it just underscores again how important the ego, like you said, Natasha, how the role it plays in you being able to rise above and actually build the relationship. I think you're right. Sometimes your counterpart, your stakeholder, is looking for a signal from you to show that, it's not about ego for you, and you're there to actually support and to help. So having the right mindset is absolutely crucial. How you develop that, I think, is more of a psychology thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I also want to say that let's be real, that there are sometimes very, very difficult stakeholders who actually have not done the work of managing their own ego, and they just simply do not want procurement to kind of like monkey with their business. They feel that they can negotiate just fine. They own the relationships with suppliers just fine. They deliver on their responsibilities to the company, and they see no need and no real reason to get engaged with procurement. And so that happens too. So I don't want to give the impression that I live in the illusionary world where everyone always or jumping up and down from the joy of working with procurement. But as any relationship, it needs to be built, and the value needs to be proven. I was recently speaking with one of my not procurement colleagues. He is Gen AI architect, brilliant techie guy, like worked for best companies and always on the cutting edge of technology and AI development. He's been with the company for 2 years, and then he got laid off. And I just asked him a question: do you have anyone who can speak on your behalf, kind of like to provide a reference or to find another opportunity within the company? And he said no. And I asked him, like, how many people, like, you've been with the company for 2 years, how many people you had lunches with, had coffee with, went for a run with, anything, ice cream? And he's like, well, I don't do this fluff. I'm a tech guy. Like, we do not have this luxury to say that I'm a tech guy or I'm a supply chain guy or a marketing guy. I don't do this fluff. This is not fluff. Our relationships is like, we have to invest time and efforts and mindful practice in building relationship.
Absolutely, Natasha. I go a step further. I'd say, and it does bring up an interesting question about difficult stakeholders and stakeholders who might not like you. I guess my question would be, if you think it's your job to make every stakeholder, like you, then sure, you might be doing the stakeholder management, but then you're probably not doing the actual job of transforming and fixing things and improving things. So I would say it's almost part of the role, that you're going to run into people who either dislike you or disagree with you. And I would say if you're not seeing that, then maybe you're not doing enough to actually, I think it's a natural thing that people should expect. I guess what happens when you do hit that stakeholder who's just, doesn't like you, doesn't really want you to bother them, sees you as a threat, even though maybe you've signaled that you're not. Do you fight back? Do you are you a lot more, do you push them more than other stakeholders, for example? Do you push back? Do you use your relationships with your other C-level colleagues, etc., and your other colleagues in the business to achieve that influence? How have you handled that kind of internally? Because it can get very politically sensitive.
Zach, the easiest answer to that question is it depends, right? How strategically important is that stakeholder to what the big needs of the broader organization are? What's your resource capacity? I mean, it's really easy to spend 80% of your time fighting battles like that, and then only have 20% of your effort to really deliver significant value to the other, handful of your stakeholders that are really ready to partner with. So I think it really is very situational in terms of how much you need to push and how much effort you put in and how much they're blocking you from adding value to, there's just so many questions in there. I'm sure Natasha has a point of view on this, and I kind of want to swing out of this stakeholder map conversation into that. So Zach, don't let us completely walk away from it. Natasha, back in episode 9, you introduced this stakeholder map that we're seeing here on the screen. So if listeners want to really get a deep understanding of this, go back to episode 9. Natasha's going to give, a much deeper overview of that back in episode number 9. Go back and listen to it. But for now, Natasha, give us the 2 or 3 minute speed run through this. How did you use this? Why is it helpful? And how can someone go build it? I know that's really fast, but move as fast through it as you can. And then the details they can get out of episode 9.
Yeah, but I think it's fairly self-explanatory. So we kind of over the time created this 4 gradations of the health of the relationship. Laughest is when everything is rosy. We work together, we build goals together, we deliver results, we communicate regularly, all is good. So, and those represent the green colors on the screen. So you build the map of your stakeholders and you mark the relationships that are very well established and work well. Then you have a gray area, which we refer to let's build connection. That's not good or it's not bad. It just means that maybe we're new to the organization. That person is new to the organization. We just don't have a connection. We just haven't had enough lunches and coffees yet. And there's an orange box surrounding the color we refer to let's work on it. And let's work on it means that we may need an intermediary to broker the piece. We may need to put extra efforts into finding common grounds. But there's some spikes or there's some thorns in our connection. And it drives, it also kind of on this map, there is an element of frequency of interaction. Like, for example, CMO, CPO quarterly, CMO and VP of marketing semi-annually, VP of media meets with VP of procurement monthly and senior director semi-annually. So when you first put together who your stakeholders are, and then you give color assessment of the strength of your partnership, and then you establish regular cadence, and basically this is your roadmap on how you interact with every organization that related to your stakeholders.
That's awesome. It starts being abundantly clear what your strategy needs to be when you see them here, right? I think one thing that I would suggest maybe adding onto this or into the spreadsheet that goes alongside it is the spend or the suppliers or whatever. So you can kind of see where you have the highest leverage based on, the key supplier interaction, because there will be people on boxes and maybe they don't even show up on the stakeholder map, right? If they don't have real supplier interaction. But this is awesome. Zach, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I love this so much. I'm a consultant, so I do stakeholder mapping all the time. I'm not kidding, Natasha, when I say this is probably the best visual representation of a stakeholder map. I would print this out and blow it up on a giant piece of paper and stick it somewhere that all the procurement can see throughout the whole year, right? Because, and we can change the color coding as we improve the relationships, etc. Because it gives you such a great one-shot view. It's not overloading you with information. I agree, Conrad, suppliers and stuff, you got to look at that lens. But again, you want it to just be clear. It's about the relationships, where we stand in the relationships, and also how are we interacting with our stakeholders. I really, really love this stakeholder map. I think I said that in episode 9 as well. So.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it because you've been in consulting much, much longer than I have. And I'm glad that it meets your standard, even though the CMO's name is Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Well,
favorite scene.
Zach, back to your other question here. You said, what if, and again, this is marketing, right? But this is the marketing tree, but the broader whole organization, when you bring in facilities and IT and everybody else, you're going to be able to highlight people in here like the person you talked about, like they're being obstinate, they're not working with me, what do I do with them? Like in the context of the broader map, that's kind of it depends answer I gave you, right? Because now you can kind of say, well, how much resources do we have to go solve that? How critical it is based on everything else. Totally agree. This is awesome, Natasha. And Anthony, maybe put this file down in the show notes so people watching can go off and grab it and refer to it, build their own. It's not wildly complicated, but even a simple model like this is super helpful.
I would say the simpler, the better. So I have a question to you guys related to stakeholder management, because I think every procurement person would very soon face the necessity to have conversation with stakeholders about AI, technology, and especially how the support that procurement provides to the stakeholders, how it will be augmented either by agentic AI or some automated services. How do you think procurement should start approaching stakeholders that maybe more than human interactions will become? Like, how do you determine if your stakeholders are ready to have that conversation? What if they do not have any automation in their world, and you're bringing them something that they may be mentally not ready, maybe organizationally not ready, maybe they don't understand what's in it for them, why they have to bat over it to accommodate the change. How do you guys think about it?
I'm thinking about there's a big push on like self-service and automation with intake and orchestration and AI, etc. But for me, I think that thread to be able to speak to a real human being, I think that's still going to be super important, even in a fully agentic world. People will want to talk to agents and in fact, have relationships with some agents. Like you start to get attached to the agent that's been, especially if they're consistent and they sound like a real human. Obviously they're not, but they'll sound like it. And so the question becomes, if at any point you need to speak to a person, you need to have that line. So you always need to have a line through it. And I would say if you're not in a role today where you're dealing with a lot of stakeholders day to day, maybe most of your job is very admin focused, or you're sitting in a corner somewhere working most of the day. I think you're going to feel more discomfort, right? But you need to put yourself out there and start going through that. It is uncomfortable at the beginning, especially if you're not used to it and you don't do it regularly. But I promise it becomes so much easier so quickly after you put yourself out there a little bit and get into that mindset of building your relationships and having things relationship driven. Yeah, don't be afraid by the fact that some agent might automate a piece of your work. Like that's a good thing, right? It frees you up to find cooler, newer stuff and to build more relationships as well.
We've talked about the impact of AI on this administrative work and the value of relationships many, many times on the podcast. I love how we started this conversation because even without sort of planning into it, it turned into relationship. Natasha's been talking about coffee and lunch and running and spending time with people. That's kind of tough for an agent to do, right? But if I understood your question, Natasha, you're kind of asking, how can you have that conversation with your stakeholders that aren't, that don't see this coming? To me, this is like one of 5 or 10 things you're going to have to talk to them about this year that may be uncomfortable. It might be that you see some, inappropriate management of a supplier or spend, or they push an RFP or a contract through without your help that you really thought you should be involved in. The ability to sit down with them. This is my take. I'd love to hear your perspective as well. But Zach mentioned it before. If there's just a total love fest, you're probably not pushing hard enough. And you need to be able to bring these hard conversations to the table. So build the relationship, have the foundation, have the trust, and then be willing to bring these hard conversations to the table. I don't think you're going to surprise anybody in the world today, at least in corporate life, when you say, hey, AI is going to change things. We're not exactly sure, or this is how it will, but there's not resistance isn't going to go away, but the hard conversations just need to be put front and center.
Yeah. Let's also kind of like, maybe I need to clarify. Laugh fast does not mean that I am liked, right? And Zach, I think you asked me the question and I dodged it, that what happens when like that your stakeholders don't like you. It almost is inevitable that like CPOs very often push through an unpopular agenda. And it's not possible that everyone in the organization will like what the strategy that CPO is driving, because they are often the value that CFO is looking for procurement to generate. They actually create constraints to all other organizations, commercial constraints or constraints in selecting providers or in flexibility of movement. They have to consider additional risks and all of that.
Okay, so there's a bunch of things related to to relationship management. I think we're just barely scratching the surface here. Guys, I think we probably have another hour or two of stuff to talk about. I know we've got a tight schedule today, so I would propose we come back and pick this up a little bit later. As we wrap it up, I'd just like to hear from each of you, from the nuggets today, what are the big things that stand out to you? Again, getting practical, call this chapter 1 of this round of stakeholder management. There's a couple really, I have a list of like 10 questions I really want to get through with you guys. We'll pop those into the next episode. But what's your big walk away today, Zach? Tell us the practical tidbit that you're carrying forward with you.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, it's the things Natasha said around, managing your ego, approaching the stakeholder in the right way, being open to feedback and taking feedback properly. Some of these skill sets, they're quite soft skills, and you don't acquire them overnight. But there are things that you should be conscious of and you should be working on yourself. I think those will be my 2 most practical bits of advice. Like I said at the beginning, the stakeholder management is with humans, and humans are all about the EQ and relationships and emotional intelligence and awareness. So lean into that. Yeah, don't lean the other way. That'd be my practical advice.
I would add to Zach that maybe 2 pieces. One is that we're all in it together. And if we can embrace that philosophy that it's not us versus them, is that we are all in it together. Maybe we're just approaching it from different perspectives, and perspectives sometimes are difficult to merge. And if that's the case, then pick your battles. Don't you can't fight in every front. Just figure out what's the most business relevant and put your energy there, versus sometimes it's better to wait until the door opens on its own versus knocking into it 15 times. What do you think, Conrad?
Pick your time, pick your battles. No, what stood out to me from this was we say stakeholder management, and we have frameworks and we have data. We're going to touch on a bunch of this stuff next time we get together, because I got a rapid fire list of questions for you guys next time out. But it just strikes me that it's about people. Relationships are about people, just like Zach's saying. And so this softer side of EQ is really what it's all about. This is why we stopped worrying about hiring technical procurement professionals. We talked about that a little bit in the last episode. And really, when we're hiring people, giving a higher score and credibility to people with really strong EQ, like people that can build these relationships, people that you can teach procurement. And by the way, if you're struggling with EQ skills, Zach just told us about himself, right? He used to be a little bit of a dynamite in a bull in a china closet, irritating stakeholders. And
I was a mid-year PITA. Okay. I think it's fair to say.
Well, it's possible, right? And I kind of started my career the same way. It's possible to soften up, focus, and understand what matters. It is about the people, and just fake it until you make it. Practice those skills every day, everywhere somebody is trying to piss you off. And if you can learn how to keep it inside and respond with kindness when you don't really feel like it, it's those daily kind of exercises that make all the difference. Listen, folks, this has been awesome. I wish we had another 2 hours right now. We will come back. So make sure you follow right into this next episode or wait patiently. It won't be long. We'll drop another rapid fire, really practical questions and tips about how to do stakeholder management. This is fundamental. I don't know where you guys would score this, but I would say stakeholder management is one of, for sure, the 3 foundations to doing your job well at any level of leadership. So stay focused on it. Don't forget to like, comment, share, anything that will help other people understand that Proc-N-Roll is the best procurement podcast in the world, and we have the most practical tips to help you be successful. We're looking forward to seeing you soon. Take care.